Alright, hello, this is Rob Graves. I'm going to be doing apparently a series of videos on Arch install since YouTube didn't like the length of my full-on one, so I guess I'm going to have to make several videos on how to do this. But at any rate, here we go. But first and foremost, you're going to need to get the Arch ISO, and right here I am on www.archlinux.org/download/. Right here we got net install and core image, and the 32-bit, the i686 CPU, and the x86-64 CPU. Since I'm using a 64-bit processor, I'm going to be installing the 64-bit one, and I'm going to do the core image. I already have it downloaded, so I'm not going to do that here. But once you have it downloaded, I have to be honest, I haven't checksummed most of my Linux ISOs in all the time I've been running Linux in the last year and a half, 2 years, and I only do it rarely, but you probably should make a habit of doing that. But right here, down below, you can see the checksums. I'm going to do MD5 checksums, but right here, the image I have is the Core x86-64 ISO, right here, and I'm going to take this number and copy it. And I'm going to move over to my terminal here. I'm just going to paste that just to keep it there. But I'm going to change into my software directory, which is where I believe I have that. But I'm going to go MD5 sum arch, and that, yep, there we go. Hit enter. Alright, and right there it's going to give me back this number, and if this matches the number I got from the website, which it does, my image is good, because you can end up with a corrupted image perhaps from a download, or and it's always good to check them to make sure that your image is good before you burn it to a disk or whatever. I don't do any disk burning anymore, actually. I just use netbootin, which is awesome. Then you can just use a USB stick. I've noticed that on live CDs of whatever distro you may be using, that the live USBs work a lot faster than live CDs. But what's cool about netbootin is you can click right here, the image, and then pick your file, and okay. At any rate, you pick your file and the USB drive, hit OK, and you're good to go. But you can also come up here, choose a distribution, and if you didn't have it downloaded, you could actually pick what you wanted, hit OK, it would download the ISO, and then make the USB bootable. And whether you're using USB or CD, you're going to want to go into your BIOS and make sure that your CD or USB, if it's supported by your BIOS, is set to boot ahead of your hard drive. But anyway, once you have your installation media set up, you can reboot. I'm going to set up a virtual machine right here real quick. Alright, I've got 8 gigs of RAM, so I'm actually going to give it maybe 2. Create new disk, startup disk, VirtualBox image, dynamically allocated. I'm not going to be doing a lot on it, but just to be safe, I'm going to give myself a little bit more. Maybe, I don't know, 13 gigs-ish. That's fine. Create. I'm going to go into settings. I don't think there's too much I want to do here, but alright. You're good. Okay, we're going to start this. Use my ISO there. Next. Now, once you have it booted up, you'll come into the Arch Linux CD or USBs menu here. You can boot the existing OS there, or boot into the installation media. And this should only take a second to boot. Alright, and we're greeted to a bash prompt, and it's got instructions right there. To begin installation, run /arch/setup. So that's what we're going to do. And we're greeted with this ncurses installation installer, the Arch Linux installation framework. We're going to select source. I'm going to be doing core local from my installation media, the CD or USB. You also have the option of actually doing the remote, but I've heard you don't want to mix those, so you do one or the other. If you're doing remote, you're in essence doing a net install, so you'll be setting up your internet connection, and all of your packages will be downloaded from the servers, from the mirrors, and then installed. When you do that, you wouldn't have to actually do an update afterwards. All your package should be up to date, whereas the way I'm doing it, you're going to have to be doing an update. But I'm going to do it the way I've been doing it with the core. Hit enter, select editor. Unless you know how to use V real well, I would choose Nano. Set clock. We're going to go to America and New York, which is where I am. You can set it to whatever you're at. UTC. Return looks good. Turn to main menu. Prepare hard disk. Now, when I initially installed Arch, I installed it on my PC. My desktop PC is a triple boot. I have Windows 7, I have Ubuntu 12.4, and I have Arch. And I, for now, intend to keep it that way. So when I first did my Arch install, I had set up the partitions using gparted and made space already set up for Arch. So I just jumped down here to 3 to manually configure the block devices, file systems, and mount points. If you were installing on a hard drive that was only going to have Arch, you could auto prepare here up top. It's going to erase the entire hard drive as it says, or manually do it. And I'm going to do it manually actually because I think that's kind of fun. Hit enter. SDA is the hard drive. It's actually recognizing my virtual drive there. But now, right here we get this menu, and we're going to go to new, use arrows right and left, click enter on new, enter on primary, and we're going to set up a 200 megabyte boot partition at the beginning. That's set to file system type Linux, and we got to click on the bootable to give a boot flag to that, because that is going to be our boot partition. Hit down on the arrow, you go to the next free space there, and we're going to hit new again, primary. We are going to make this our swap partition, and for now I guess I'll just make it a gig, 1024, just for example purposes. Hit enter, beginning. That says Linux up there and file system type. We're actually going to go to the right to type, right here, hit enter, and if you look in the center right there, towards the bottom it says Linux swap Solaris is number 82, and right there it's already got us set at 82. Hit enter. If it doesn't, type in 82 and then enter, and then it will set it up as Linux swap. To the rest of our free space, we hit new, primary. This will be our root partition. I think I'm going to make that 8 gigs for the purposes of this exercise. Enter, beginning, and then the last one will be our home. Ideally, and I'm just going to use the rest for that. Ideally though, you're going to want your home probably to be the largest, and you're going to need enough space in your root partition for any app, for the file system itself, and any apps you install, any programs, packages you install on your Arch installation. But when you're all done with that, you have to go to right, hit enter, and ask if you want to do that yes or no. You actually have to type in YES, not just Y, and then enter. And then we can quit. And if you wanted to check that, that it has been written. So then we can hit done. Now we are going to go to manually configure block devices, file systems, and mount points, the 3 on this. Hit enter. We're going to do it by dev. Dev SDA1 is the one we set up as boot. We're going to hit yes, enter, go down to extended 2 and /boot, and for a label we are going to label it as /boot, and no other options, just hit enter. SDA2 we are creating as swap, hit enter. We're going to put in /swap for the label, no other options. SDA3 is our root file system. We're going to use extended 4 and root there. Label is going to be just the root with /, no other options there. And the last one is going to be our home, also extended 4, mark it as home, and the /home is what I'm going to be labeling that, no other options. So they all should be set up right here with the mount points and the file system for each one. Hit done when you're done, and it's going to create all those file systems and labels on each of our partitions. Alright, hit OK, return to main menu. Then we're going to select packages. Hit OK. We're going to use grub as our bootloader. Now actually when I did this, I bypassed the entire grub installation and ended up booting. When I was all done with this installation, I booted into Ubuntu and ran from a terminal sudo update-grub, and grub2 from Ubuntu just picked up on Arch. You're still going to have to pick grub here if you're doing it that way, and then later we'll skip that if that's the method we're going to be using. Here, base is always selected by default. I'm going to add base devel. I believe that's for building your own packages. If you don't choose that here, you can actually install that later. But at any rate, the spacebar selects it, and then you can just hit enter to continue. Here's the list of packages. There are a bunch down at the bottom that are already selected, but we're going to throw on GPM, GDBM. If you're using wireless for internet connection, you may have to install some of these packages in here. It says what they're for different wireless packages, but I have a wireless card in this desktop PC. I'm not going to be using it. I'm going to be using a wired connection, but just for the sake of showing, I'm going to install a couple of these wireless packages. I'm going to install Lynx, which is a terminal web browser. I'm going to be installing NetTools and NetCFG. Pacman mirror list. Again, spacebar selects these. I'm going to be installing sudo. Wireless tools, WP action. Yeah. Then once we're all set, we can just hit enter, and then we're on install packages, hit enter again, hit OK. Alright, and hit Y. Just going to check the package integrity and do the install, and this will be the fastest install of any Linux distro I've ever seen. You're not getting much, but this is Arch, so we're going to add to it in the next video, in the next couple of videos. And this should go relatively quickly. Alright, and it says package installation complete there. We can hit enter and get out of there. We need to configure the system. Alright, we're going into etcrc.conf, which is the main configuration file for Arch Linux. Right here we can see our locale, daemon, locale, hardware clock, time zone, keyboard map, so on and so forth. Options for modules. And right here we're going to change our host name. This is actually what's going to end up showing. It's kind of like the name of the computer from the Windows world, or I'm going to call it Arch VBox. But on your terminal it'll show your username at this here. So you can change it to whatever you want, or you can leave it. It's up to you. My first few Arch installs, I had a lot of fun setting up the internet, and I noticed that this is the easiest way if you're using a wired connection. Right here, you scroll down a bit, you get to interface equals, and you put in ETH0. That's for your first wireless, not wireless, first Ethernet card. Linux uses numbering 0 up, so 0, 1, 2, so on and so forth. So if you had two cards, it would be ETH0 would be the first one, and then ETH1 would be the second one. If you only have one, it's going to be ETH0 most likely, or probably. And that's really all I had to do. If you're going to be setting up a wireless one, I end up later uncommenting this and setting it up there. I'm going to show how to do that later. I end up never using the net file system thing. I think that's what that is, but I never use it, so I'm removing it. Hit Control X, then Y, then Enter to save that. We're going to go into Etsy fstab, which is where all your partitions are mounted, and all the things we created automatically have entries here. You can actually add things if you wanted to mount, say, an external hard drive or something here, or another partition somewhere else in here, but everything looks as it should, so we're going to hit Control X and get out of there. MK init CPIO. This stuff I haven't played with too much yet, but I never change anything in there for now. Modprobe.conf. I'm not doing anything here at the moment, but when I end up installing my proprietary drivers, I end up having to blacklist stuff in here. Resolve.conf. I never change anything in. Host. I've seen it done here, and I've always done it this way. I don't know if it's necessary or not, but I add my host name that I created earlier here. So I always leave it that way, and I don't know. Locale, which should already have in your location unchecked. The hashtags, the pound symbol, number symbol, is like a comment, so it doesn't read those lines. But ENUS, there should be 2 of them that are unchecked for me, and I went past it. Up. That's what I get for not paying attention. There we go. ENUS UTF and ENUS ISO right there, so that's correct. Pacman.conf. This is the main configuration for Pacman, which is the package manager for Arch Linux. We're going to be playing with this a little bit later in the next video. But for now, these are the repos we are using. Testing is commented out, and we're going to leave it that way. We've got core, extra, community testing is commented, community. And since I'm using a 64-bit OS, I'm going to be uncommenting multilib, which I believe is to make 32-bit binaries run better or something. Actually, I'm not really honestly sure on a 64-bit system, but I always do it. The mirror list. First time I did an Arch install, I actually forgot to uncomment anything in here, so I had no mirrors. But you need to scroll down. They've got all the different countries, and you probably want to pick something near to you. I'm in the United States, and I'm going to uncomment a few of these, and actually I'm going to skip a couple of these because I've been having some timeout issues with these first 4. ArchLinux subsec.org and the cakelib FIT edu. So I'm going to skip a couple of these, and I'm going to uncomment the rest of them. Later I'm also going to be running Reflector to get the fastest mirrors. There. So those are uncommented. Control X, Y, and Enter to save that. We need to put in a root password for the system, and then enter it again. And then once that's done, we can hit done. Gonna reconfigure there. This should only take a second. And we're all good. Now, right here's where we're going to be installing the bootloader. The way I originally did it, I skipped this. It's going to complain, and you'll still say skip if you're going to go into like Ubuntu, for example, and run sudo update-grub. If you were going to do it that way. Me personally, since this is a virtual machine, I don't care. I'm just going to install grub, and every time you do this, it'll show you the grub config file. You can edit things as necessary, assuming you know how to do it. It always has a Windows entry in here, which is commented out by default. It looks good. We're just going to hit Control X, get out of there. I'm going to install to SDA, which is the first hard drive and the boot hard drive in my case. Actually, it's the only hard drive in my case at the moment, but we actually had a little bit of a discussion on the IRC channel, pound Linux distro community, about whether or not to install this on SDA, or if you can make like an SDB or whatever, the boot drive, and try to do this, and someone was having some issues doing it that way. And I've always made SDA my boot drive, and if I was gonna make whatever became SDB my boot drive, I would change it so that it became SDA and boot drive, and so I generally don't have any problems, and I believe that resolved his problem too. But installing on SDA, grub was installed successfully. We are going to exit the install, and right here we can reboot or shut down, and the system is set up. You can remove the go to boot existing OS on Arch Linux, but that was the CD. But I'm going to remove the ISO there for some amount. But at any rate, we've got, this is booting into our new install. You have to log in with root and put in the password you created earlier, and here we are. Fresh new Arch install at its base. Nothing extra, no fancy bells and whistles. And this is where I'm going to end video 1, and we'll continue video 2 from here. Alright, thank you.